Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Papers Podcast. This is Jason, one of the hosts, and just wanted to let you know that we're taking a short fall break. Lara's probably off writing a paper. Linda's probably traveling the world. John is, who knows what John's doing? If you know my friend John, every week he sort of picks a new project, and one week it's skeet shooting, the next he's becoming a sommelier. He's just kind of smart that way. I actually predict he's doing his nails, something like that. So manicures are this week's thing. Either way, we are all off. We hope you're enjoying the Papers Podcast. Please enjoy the archive. Have a look at our past episodes. Listen to the jokes. Stay for the informative analysis of people's papers. As always, we love having you being part of the community. We'll talk to you again very soon.
Welcome back to the Papers Podcasts. Linda here. And for those of you who listen regularly, thank you for coming. For those of you who don't listen regularly, you should be, because
You're first here and we're yelling at you. Get on it.
How about a word of welcome? Nice to have you.
I said
Take your
welcome
shoes off.
back.
Put your feet off the carpet.
What I was going to say was you should be listening regularly, because there's lots of people, of the hosts on this podcast, who say really important things about medical education. Like Lara, for instance, who's going to tell us about her paper.
Hi, everybody. So glad to be here today. And thank you, Linda, for the warm welcome. John, how are you doing, hon?
I'm doing great. I'm fully caffeinated. I have my my Father's Day owl mug rolling.
Love that.
Yeah.
We should describe that for audio listeners.
It's an owl.
It's a pink owl.
It's an owl. It's painted by a small child at some point.
It's a pink owl.
My favorite color. I'm sure my children secretly put lead paint in it, because they look at me and say, keep drinking from the cup. Not long before this is all ours.
And how are you doing, Jason?
I'm great.
Sweet. And Linda, you are having a good day in Montreal? The sun's shining, birds are singing?
Excellent, warm, sunny. I can hardly wait to get outside. So get on with this, will you, Lara?
Let's do it. So, friends, I picked this paper for a reason that's really simple. I know for our regular listeners, it's going to come as a shock to hear that perhaps my technological skills are not as high as you might imagine. And so when I see a paper that summarizes some literature about things that I should know from the tech side of the house of medical education, I'm on that like white on rice. So I have to be honest, though, like I've embraced Chat GPT. I know how to use it. I can do that. I am beholden to my navigational apps like Waze and those things, because I literally have no sense of direction. So I need that. And as a researcher, friends, if you haven't played with Scopus AI, you are missing out. You got to get out into Scopus. It has an AI function. It'll change your life. So when I saw this manuscript, I'm like, yes, I need this. I appreciate AI, but like there's a bunch of papers in the field now, and I need somebody to help make sense of it. Ergo, I picked this paper. The paper is entitled A Scoping Review of Artificial Intelligence in Medical Education. It's a BME review published just this year, 2024. Now, before we get into the meat of the paper, I'm curious about how all of you have adopted AI into your medical education practices. And I'm okay with the fact that maybe you haven't. But have you seen your learners and colleagues using it in interesting ways? What has surprised you about AI to date? John, I'm going to make you go last, because I'm pretty sure it's possible. Like if it was possible to literally mainline the technology into your veins, you'd be like, move over 7 out of 9. I'm plugging into the Borg. So I'm going to make you go last. Let's go, Jason, Linda, John.
I'm glad you asked me first, because I have a quick question for you. Why is this a BME review? It's a scoping review, which is kind of like, here's a picture of the landscape, but it doesn't strike to me like it should be a BME review, which is best evidence available. What's your take on that?
So my take on that is, and I'll be really interested in what the rest of y'all think, because my understanding is that BME is an organization that's don't ask me why I feel it's affiliated with Amy or the specific way in which it's affiliated, because I don't know the specifics there, but I believe it's affiliated with Amy. And the idea behind this BME group organization is that they help to make sure that knowledge syntheses that are done in medical education are done in a robust kind of way. So if you do a scoping review or a systematic review, you can work with or apply to BME to have somebody look over your materials, over your context, over your processes to make sure that what you generate actually is best evidence.
Oh, I see.
That's
So
my
it's
understanding.
like a stamp from a group, as opposed to this is best evidence. It's just a name.
Maybe.
That's your take on it?
I
Okay,
don't
okay,
know.
okay.
I don't know.
Okay, so back to your question. AI, I am still a dabbler. My kids are in this house in their 20s. The AI automates a lot of things. I've started to automate some things, not as much as John. And I got to tell you, though, when I've used AI as in part of searches, I get a lot of hallucinations in medical education. So that kind of turns me off, but I'm working on it.
I use the navigation aids and I use ChatGPT for myself, but I'd like to talk about how my students use AI, usually ChatGPT, and usually when they're writing a paper. And often, but not always, when they're writing in a language that's not their first language. And sometimes what comes out hasn't been checked. And just the same as Jason gets hallucinations, the students often get hallucinations and they don't check or don't know to check what's coming out. And so sometimes you get really weird things in their assignments.
All right, I got lots of things to say. First, I love the Star Trek reference. Thank you very much.
Just for you, buddy. Totes.
There we go.
Oh,
okay.
yeah. Live long and prosper.
So for those of you who think that there's hallucinations, you're using old generation, those hallucinations are going way fast. And there's a lag in your own human brain with what's actually happening. In terms of search, I'm going to direct you to Elicit. Have you tried that, Lava?
No, I don't know Elicit.
I don't have any stakes in the company, so this is not a
It doesn't
paid
sound
promotion.
polite, though. Can we talk about it on the podcast?
It makes it even more exciting.
Okay.
But I would love
Is it
to
explicit or illicit?
I heard explicit, so
It does great work summarizing and searching for you in terms of technical papers. My new writing hack is I will dictate into a document and I get a flow of consciousness and I get past writer's block and I do all that and then I dump it into an LLM and it cleans it for me and it comes back in workable text prose. If you've ever listened to a transcription of a conversation, you're like, this is just junk when you read it. But if you can just talk your way to the first draft and then have Gen AI clean it, and then you actually have a workable first draft, that's really exciting in terms of just workflow. But the last part is actually I'm founding a startup that's using
shut
Gen
the
AI.
front door. Are you really?
Yeah.
Dude, count me in. I don't know what we're doing, but I'll do it.
Are you surprised?
I have an NDA you'll need to sign. Actually, I have an NDA for all the listeners they have to sign before I can tell you more. But I think this is an interesting way to advance teaching with a transformation of the type of teaching we're doing rather than just an augmentation. We're going to talk about transformation and augmentation later in this podcast because I think there's a really great framework for adjudicating new educational technologies. So yes, it's here. Welcome Skynet. Take me up. I'm ready. I'm ready for the cable to the back of my head.
Beam me up, Scotty. All right. So this paper, as I said, is a BME scoping review. And I just want to say that the author list is long. Many people you know are on the author list. First author is Morris Gordon. And the goal of the research, and I'll just read it for you. This review aimed to map the literature regarding AI applications in medical education, core areas of findings, potential candidates for formal systematic review, and gaps in the literature for future research. Fine. So let's dive into the methods. The authors conducted a scoping review with a twist. In the abstract, they call it a rapid scoping review. In the first line of the method section, they say the scoping review was conducted in rapid time frame. So this led me to a lovely afternoon of reading about methodologies of rapid reviews because I don't know much about rapid reviews and more, rapid scoping reviews more precisely. Let me share with you just a little snippet of what I learned. From what I can find, a rapid scoping review is really quite similar to a scoping review, but there are a few key differences. One is that the project timeline is short. So if a scoping review is expected to take a year or so, maybe more to do, then a rapid scoping review is closer to 4 months. If scoping reviews have several broad research questions, a rapid scoping review is going to limit that scope. And if scoping reviews have data extraction approaches that focus on depth and generation of new knowledge, then a rapid scoping reviews, those questions are more tailored in the data extraction and trying to meet a very specific aim, probably a narrow one. So this study was conducted within 16 weeks, like, wow, of its inception, 16 weeks from the day we started to the day we're done. So that's pretty rapid for sure. They followed Arksey and O'Malley's methodology, fine. They chose not to do Levac's recommendation for external stakeholders because they felt they had sufficient expertise in the author team. Here, comment previously, look at the author list, you're going to know these people. I'm okay with that. They searched PubMed, Medline, Embase, and MedEd Publish. Now, for the record, I did think that was a bit odd because PubMed and Embase, that's fine, yeah, good databases, but maybe not as many as we'd expect, but as a rapid review, fine. But MedEd Publish, I'd be interested in what you thought about that, because MedEd Publish is a post-production review platform, right? So MedEd Publish? Which one's MedEd Publish?
This is the AMI alternative open access platform.
Right. No.
Right? It's like, what's the one in WMC runs? It's a repository of educational objects. Come on, guys, help me here.
Portal, is it?
MedEd Portal.
Yeah.
I think of it like the MedEd Portal.
Yeah, but MedEd Portal's different than MedEd Publish, right? Because MedEd Publish is the post-production review, right?
No,
John, I'm looking at you.
It's an alternative platform.
So are these peer-reviewed? What's on there?
Yes.
Okay, we'll discuss this more afterwards.
Readers can help us out, but go ahead and tell everybody that I'm right.
No, I'm not going to go with that. What I'm going to do is I'm watching my friend John go online and sort this out right now because he's not going to let us have this hanging.
How come John gets all the cred?
Because
what the hell?
Good. Because
he's
friends,
good.
No,
oh my God.
Is. But I mean, from a technology side, look at us.
It's not right? a tech issue.
I'm just saying he's recording.
Publishing.
He's recording and he's doing a search. I'm not sure the other three of us can do two things at the same time. Moving on.
Deeper, Lara.
All right, so
here it is.
MedEd Portal is you put an innovation online and you actually share the innovation. You share the curriculum, you share the tool, you share the cases, and that's funded by AAMC.
And that's that. Which one is that one?
MedEd Portal. MedEd Publish.
Yes.
Is
Amy.
Rapid, funded by Amy. It's a rapid, transparent publishing site that does have peer review. It would look much more.
But peer reviews after publication, isn't it?
No.
So it's exactly like Curious, which is an open access resource. So sadly, I'm going to have to agree with me on this one.
Come on.
Right.
Come on.
Anyway,
Come on, Lara.
I feel you may have had a partial point. But anyway, but my point here is that I found myself having a whole moment of, okay, database, and what? But anyway, that's fine. Let's talk about it. I'd be open to your conversations and comments about that selection. Now,
hang on. Peer review of articles takes place after publication. The article is published.
Shut the front door. Varpio for the win.
I wasn't going to let Jason win. Don't worry. I got you. I
love you. I love you.
So wrong.
But you have to get an expert reviewer and you invite them to review it, and then they put their review online beside your paper.
Okay, so I post my paper. They post it without review. I find a friend and say, could you please go say nice things about my paper on the website? And then do.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Hannah Turner, and I'm the managing editor for MedEd Portal. I'm a new fan of the Papers podcast after my colleague shared your episode number 67 about an AI rapid scoping review, where there was some confusion about MedEd Publish versus MedEd Portal. In spite of the wonderful real-time fact-checking, I thought it'd be helpful to provide the hosts and listeners with a few additional facts about the platforms. MedEd Portal, the Journal of Teaching and Learning Resources, was established in 2004 and is published by the AAMC. While the article format has evolved over the last 20 years, we've always used a traditional peer review model to rigorously assess educational innovations. Our singular publication format includes an article, which we call the Educational Summary Report, and all of the appendices needed to replicate the curricular innovation. MedEd Portal is led by our editor-in-chief, Dr. Grace Wong, and will soon be led by Dr. Lauren Maggio. Our indexed publications are Diamond Open Access, which means they're completely free to read, submit, and publish. MedEd Publish was established in 2016 and is published by Amy. It is a pre-print platform with a post-publication open peer review, after which articles are eligible for indexing. Supported by editorial staff, MedEd Publish has 16 article types that can be published open access for an article processing fee. In the end, we find the most similar thing about the two is the name. Happy to answer any other questions at mededportal@aamc.org, and thanks for listening.
Back to the authors and this literature review. They did a hand search of identified articles and added manuscripts that were cited that they deemed relevant. They included pretty much everything published that addressed AI and MedEd that I would have, of my collection of articles, all of them were in there. So yeah, excluding only articles that dealt with AI for diagnostic purposes, clinical or organizational purposes, or that talked about AI only for like a research purpose. They divided the corpus into two for data extraction. One group consisted of all the papers that were research reports or innovations. The second consisted of perspectives and opinion papers. For the research and innovation papers, they developed and then used an extraction tool that collected information about study demographics, how the AI was used, about the kind of AI used, the rationale for it, For the perspective papers, they used the same data extraction tool, but also added details about the rationale for using AI, its application of the framework, and recommended topics for curriculum and research and the such. So while we've had a robust discussion about all kinds of things that are not relevant, I would be very interested in your thoughts on the methods. Let's go, Linda, Jason, John.
So I love the fact that they had sort of a double-pronged thing. If you look at most lit reviews, they exclude opinion papers and perspectives and things like that. And I think for this particular research question, it was really important to have those in there, and for this type of a scoping review. So good on you guys for having that two-pronged, part on innovation and part on perspectives.
You know what? If you accept that it's a rapid review, it's right on the money. And they also get extra marks from me for the nice, colorful diagrams. Even John would like these infographics, and he's pretty critical.
This is an exemplary rapid scoping review. They follow the Prisma extension. They have a large author group, which you might wonder, why do they have 16 authors on this paper? It's because they have a lot of work to do. They have to do it quickly, but they also need to synthesize the literature they have wrapped their arms around a big corpus of studies and editorials and commentaries. Their search ends August of 23. They submit December 23. They're accepted January 24, and they're published in a volume April 24. No wonder they have 16 authors. I have no concerns about any methodologies. I will pay attention to their results because I don't think there's a critical or even a minor flaw here.
Knowing that they had 16 authors and listening to that timeline, do you know what boggles my mind? I have a hard time getting all like shorter author lines, like fewer people. I have a hard time getting all those ducks in a row for the paper. Like they went from finishing the review to writing the paper in really short time. So to the lead author, congratulations on the leadership skills, because that's legit. Okay, moving on to results. How many papers did they end up with? Brace for it, hold on tight for 278. Shoot me now. That's a lot. And now we remember why they had 16 authors. But respect, they did this in 16 weeks. They say a full appendix of extracted data for the papers had been uploaded in a repository. While the first paper about AI published starting in 1998, the real surge of papers came around 2018. If there were 11 papers published in 2018, that number was up to 57 in 2022, and it was at 114 as of August 23. So yeah, it's a hot topic. About 70% of papers were research and innovation, the other 30 perspectives and opinions. The focus of about 50% of the corpus was undergraduate medical education, leaving 22% for GME and only 3% for CPD. And we've already thought about how this is good. Go ahead, Linda. You want to say something?
I was really, in a way, disappointed that only 3% was CPD. I wasn't surprised, but because I think that's where we need to focus our attention when it comes to, being efficient in education for people in practice.
Yeah. And
I wonder if that's just proportional to the whole med ed literature. Like there's fewer papers about CPD.
Fact. Okay, but the papers were from 24 different clinical specialties, basic science departments. So, long story short of the demographics, everybody's talking about it. Everybody is in on this conversation. So when you get to the results and you see, like the technical term is a bucket ton of different segments for the results, that's why. Because there's 278 articles. They found many different ways of mapping the literature. So instead of me reading all of that to you, what we've done amongst the four of us is we did some homework and we all picked a section. The part that I thought was really cool was about the ethics. So my interest was piqued by those 14 papers in the corpus that addressed ethics. They talk about a caution of the limitations of AI applications in medical education and about the need for educators to really grapple with the ethics of AI when, let's be honest, most of us are still trying to figure out how to use it, what it is, what we do. It's a real moving target that we're actively in the midst of developing. So ways of using AI are constantly being developed. And so we need to be constantly reflecting on the questions, the ethical questions that those evolutions and developments bring with them. The paper list offers some topics that should be covered about AI ethics. Some of the ones I thought were particularly important are algorithmic bias and ethics or equity, right? So what data is in there makes a big difference on what comes out, what's generated by the AI. And we know that the knowledge going into the AI there's implicit bias, there's structural inequity embedded in that. So we really do need to be worrying about that. The second one I just want to highlight is about transparency and informed consent. Physicians have a duty to inform their patients about how AI is being used in their treatment and care planning, and about how the data is being collected and used. Their anonymity is not ironclad, right? With more and more AI resources being developed, it's getting increasingly possible for people to be identified across platforms. So we really got to be thinking and asking hard questions about what data am I generating? How am I sharing it? And I also have to ask questions about the AI that's the generation, the product that's generated by AI. Is it really an equitable, just product, or do I have to ask some questions here? So with that, that's my view on the ethics piece. I'm interested in what you're thinking. So let's go, John, Linda, Jason.
First off, in terms of the scoping review, the results are typical of a scoping review. At the start of the review, there's very little. And right at the end of the search, there's a lot, because you choose a topic that is timely and of interest, and it builds over time. Nobody's saying, hey, I wonder what the lecture of the professor in an operating theater looks like, because that's what we did 200 years ago. So that kind of feels the same. We also see this similar typical demographics around geography. There's overrepresentation of the global north versus the south. That probably speaks to constraints and resources. And then the last part is we don't see continuing professional development really included in this conversation. Our education scholarship is heavily focused on UGME and then subsequently on PGME, and forget where I think AI might have the biggest opportunity. It's the cultivation, it's the just-in-time, it's a very tailored distribution to a busy clinician in practice. That's an interesting gap for me. Now, I wanted to talk about assessment. And as I kind of alluded to before, I want to talk about this SAMR EdTech model, which has been used in a number of, I'm not sure if we've talked about it on the Papers podcast before, but it's a fairly well-known model. And it stands for substitution. So how can a technology replace a traditional method? Augmentation. How can a technology bring a new functionality to an existing process? Modification. How does it redesign or improve a task? And redefinition. Does it bring something completely new into the conversation? And I think when you use this type of framework, it helps you say what's happening with technology. It's not all apples. It's more fruit salad. It's tweaks, or it's complete change, or it's replacement. Our computer overlords have made us redundant as assessors, which might be a cheer from some of the people on the podcast. Let me give you some examples, but there's a richness of it. It seems that the literature is very heavily at the substitution. We take out menial tasks using AI for assessment, or augmentation. We take a task, but we make it a little bit more streamlined. And I'll give you some examples. So at substitution, there's a whole bunch of papers around multiple choice question generation. At augmentation, there is the video analysis of psychomotor skills. So can AI see how you're doing and produce a parallel score for a human assessor? Or can human assessors provide narrative feedback and then the AI actually scrape that data, analyze it, and provide summation of all of the narrative scores for an individual? And so that's an example of one of the studies that we perform. So can you take 20,000 words of narrative assessment over the course of residency training and say, here's the trajectory, here's the arc? At the modification level, can you take a task and redesign it in a significant way? So one example is the development of a virtual OSCE, which also has online grading. And so we take something and we transform it in a way. And then at the redesign or the redefinition or the redesign level is, can we predict medical student success on high stakes exams when we dump all of our assessment data into it and produce true learning curves or true future performance models? That was the holy grail of programmatic assessment 10 years ago. And maybe with AI, we might be able to get through the noise to actually see some data. So I think, and I'm a big positivist for AI. I think there's lots of opportunity here to take our role of assessment and substitute some of the meaningless work that we do, augment, and so we get better outputs, modify, meaning we change our current models, but turn it into something that gives us new ways of thinking, or completely redefine how we're going to assess. So I'm pretty bullish on where we're going with AI and assessment. P.S. Love the graphics in this study. I don't say that often. So P.S. Love the graphics. There are a lot of clip art, but they did it in a good way.
Yeah, they got lots of primary colors, John. That's good for you to play with. Get your crayons out. I picked the section on admissions and selection and the use of AI there. And I first started thinking, what are some of the challenges in admissions and selection? And there's a couple that come to mind. One is bias. The second is, I've got a huge number of individuals to look at, the large numbers. The third is, am I making the right decisions? In other words, the prediction. And the fourth, which is a very practical one, is everybody's asking me the same questions when they come for the interviews, whatever they're coming for. Can I deal with that to make things more efficient? So when you look at some of the AI papers, first, the AI has been used to host a question and answer session. I presume this was for candidates who are all asking the same questions. And so that's obviously very efficient. Second, AI used to detect a gender bias in letters of reference. And in fact, there was a gender bias in letters of reference. Third, AI used to rank medical student evaluations and comparing that with faculty evaluations. And in this case, AI failed. It didn't pick up the nuances and the subtleties. Fourth, as a predictive model, who was ranked and matched, and the success in that was very high. AI could be very helpful there. But the most of the studies had to do with screening applications when you have large numbers of applicants. And AI was very successful for that. It also identified applicants who might otherwise have fallen through the cracks, who might otherwise have not been chosen because of a bias. So bottom line is, I think if you think about the challenges you have in a particular area and how AI can help, in general, AI can help with admissions and selections.
Cool. I'm also very enthusiastic about this paper. When I first looked at it, I thought, this is going to be a giant list, a long smorgasbord of every paper. But actually, it's really good. It's really accessible. It's going to be highly cited. Let me highlight one area which I think has potential. So all of you, I know John's seen that. Like, all of you have watched the reboot of Star Trek that came out a few years ago. And there's a scene, John's doing like Peace and Prosper. There's a scene where a young Spock in this reboot is in this pit.
Yes.
And there's an AI interacting with Spock, teaching, correcting, giving more challenging questions, kind of like it's responsive to his right answers and so on. So
isn't that cool? That's a section in this paper that you can teach clinical reasoning using AI that is tailored, can generate a whole bunch of a library of clinical cases with key features and help a given learner recognize key features, get more accurate, be even smarter. I think that's got a lot of potential, and it's probably the future.
So just for the record, listeners, Star Trek isn't in the paper. It's just like a common trend, apparently, throughout our conversation today. So don't be disappointed when you don't have a figure of Spock in the hole with the teacher outside, because there's lots of other figures in the paper that are excellent. So I'm just going to end with a few words about the discussion. Two things specifically. One, the paper ends by offering what they call the facets framework. And the facets framework is all about trying to make sure that all the papers that continue in the future cover, they're comprehensive. They cover all the aspects of the AI that we want to know about so that we can do cross comparisons as this literature grows and develop greater insights, making synthesis probably easier. So you can kind of imagine how the facets framework came into mind. It's not because what their job was easy, right? It's because papers were missing important pieces. I encourage the listeners to go and look at that framework. And if you're going to write about an AI innovation, I think it's probably a good idea to look at the facets framework just to say, did I address and mention and report all of these things? Go ahead. Sherbino has got another interruption.
I wanted to endorse what you're saying. We're at the period where everyone has something new and shiny, but at some point we need to mature this literature. And so Dave Cook would remind us that comparative effectiveness research is really important. So you have to say, and using that framework, the facets framework allows you to tag or to categorize what you're actually doing so that the next iteration is not just a new thing. And that we don't just keep seeing shiny baubles everywhere, but we try to advance MCQ generation forward in a way. We try to advance video OSCEs forward in a way, and you can't compare it just on the superficial features. You need this framework that you're describing.
Linda?
I agree. When I first looked at the framework, I poo-pooed it. I said, this is very generic. It's not going to help. And then I realized it has to be generic because it's addressing the broad field of AI. And so, yeah, I think it'll be helpful.
But couldn't it be used, honestly, for any innovation? Like you just adapt the wording a little bit so it's not about AI? It seems really useful, actually, that way.
We have had a great conversation. I'm excited to get to our voting because we're all going to agree it's a 5 across the board on both items. So let's start with methods, and we will go Jason, Linda, John.
Methods were good. 4.
Linda?
They're good, but more than good. 5.
John?
Can I just say that for the first time in forever, you forced us to use an ordinal scale, and I'm so happy. And there's going to be no...
I'm going to give it a 4.5 then, just to drive you nuts.
It's a 5.
I'm going to give it a 4 and a Spock. Boom shakalaka.
Oh, man. Why did I just push your buttons? It's a 5. 5 for... This is
Why,
a great
John? Why?
methodology.
And now to results. 1 to 5. Let's go inverse. John, Linda, Jason.
Mine's a 5 with an asterisk. And the asterisk is...
Oh, and you're giving me a hard time for not doing ordinal, whatever.
This is going to stale date very quickly.
Yeah.
And so right now, this is state of the art. This changes everything. But read this paper in 2 years, you're like,
yeah,
I know all this. And so read it now and tell all your friends now. But don't put it in your reading list to get to it in a future date, because then you're like, oh, this is just a 3, or this is what it looked like 18 months ago. This is Moore's Law happening right now.
Yeah, I agree it's a 5 now, but I wouldn't give it 2 years, John. I'd give it 6 months before it's stale dated.
Yeah, lots of papers coming out. Jason?
I think it's a 5 because people will refer to this for the next year or so, and you can reference it to launch any AI paper, and facets is useful.
And I, too, am going to give it a 5 for all the reasons mentioned. And so with that, friends, and just because John was so excited I gave it a 5, I'm going to give it a 5 and an asterisk. And I'm not going to tell you what the asterisk is for, and that's going to drive you nuts. So, friends, thank you for listening to yet another recording of the Papers Podcast. We're so glad you're here. And because we want to hear from you, we are going to ask you to get in touch with us. And because it's a skill that is like a Vin Diesel level skill, John's going to tell you how to get in touch.
You couldn't remember, could you?
No, I couldn't remember at all.
You can reach us on our website, paperspodcast.com, Or if you're Vin Diesel and you still use the email and you're fast and furious with your typing on email, you can reach us at thepaperspodcast@gmail.com. I did want to give a shout out to one of our listeners. I think a new listener to the Papers Podcast, Suraj Mithawani. Suraj is a hematologist here at McMaster, and he wrote us a really nice note. We covered one of his papers. I can't remember which episode it was. It was a paper on practice variability. And his comment is, it's always been one of my nerd goals to have a paper featured on the podcast. Love the discussion and learned a lot from it. I'm really grateful for that kind of comment when we can have a value add to the authors, let alone the listener. So thanks, Suraj, for the note. Thanks for also taking my calls in the middle of the night when I'm saying, the CBC looks all crazy. What do you think it means? Thanks for listening.
Talk to you later.
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Papers Podcast. We hope we made you just slightly smarter. The podcast is a production of the Unit for Teaching and Learning at the Karolinska Institutet. The executive producer today was my friend Teresa Sörö. The technical producer today was Samuel Lundberg. You can learn more about the Papers Podcast and contact us at www.thepaperspodcast.com. Thank you for listening, everybody, and thank you for all you do. Take care.